Hey everyone, in today's lesson I am going to show you how I prep my drums and I get them ready for editing. Alright, so here I have a drum session. I just loaded them in. As you can see that they're all at unity gain. So I do a couple of things. Okay, first I also make sure that the BPM is correct. In this case, this drum track is 79 beats per minute. And you can see that there is some editing that I'm going to have to do. And I have another video in which I show you how I edit drums using two methods, slip editing and elastic audio. But in this video, I'm showing you how I prep these drums so I can start editing them. All right, so first thing I will do is I want to zero out all the faders so I can do a rough mix. I'm going to select all, and I'm going to zero out my board. Then I'm going to click all again. Okay, good. And then I'm going to find a spot in the song where there is a lot going on, probably over here, so I can focus on this section. And I will now make sure I bring up my mix bus at 0. And I always start with the snare top. The snare top, since it's the loudest transient, I will mix everything around my snare top. So I'm going to hit play. And I'm going to start bringing up my snare top. And I always like to put my snare top at -6 dB. And then I mix all the rest of my drums around it. And the reason I do that is because later on when I bring everything else in, I get a nice healthy mix. So now I have my snare top. Okay, now I'm going to bring my snare bottom. And you notice that I kind of matched it. The reason I did that is because I want to check for the phase. I want to make sure that the phase is correct. So when you have two microphones facing each other, you're going to get some phase issues. And sometimes this is corrected at the recording stage, but sometimes I do get mixes in which the phase button wasn't flipped. So I'm going to get some phase issues. And right here, I already hear it that the snare top is very thin. This is how I check to see if there's any phase issues. Now remember, I'm not mixing right now in terms of using plugins or EQing or anything like that. I'm just doing a rough mix just so I can edit these drums. But I am going to bring up a plugin, and this is the plugin that I use, the SSL plugin, to check for phase. And here is my phase button. So let's listen to before and after. This is without it. So you can hear that when I flip it, the body of the snare top gets fuller, or it's warmer, or there's more bottom end. And that's how you check for phase. You listen to the snare top, and the snare top sounds fuller. There's more body to it. There's more weight to it. If without it, it sounds a little thin. And if it sounds a little thin, that's because there's some phase issues and there's frequencies being canceled. All right, so now that I have that, now I can tuck the snare bottom underneath the snare top. All right, so that's pretty good. If you notice, I tucked it underneath. And what I was listening for, I wanted to listen to the snare bottom. I wanted to listen to the sizzle, like the wires. I want to hear the snare wires underneath it. But I don't want to overpower it. The snare top is really the body, and that's what I want to hear. Okay, so now that I got that, let's go to my next shell, and that is the kick. Because most of the time when you're listening to drums, it's kick and snare, right? So I want to get this relationship right. So now let's bring up the kick. Okay, good. All right, so now that I have my kick and snare going, Now I'm going to bring the overheads. Okay, so let's start there. And then I also check for phase. I do the same thing with the overhead. So I'm going to bring up an SSL channel, and I'm going to flip the phase, and I'm going to listen to the snare. And I want to see if the snare goes away, like the body of the snare. Here we go. Okay, so you hear that? When I flip the phase button, the snare like became alive and there was a lot of weight. So there was some phase issues there with the overheads when this was recorded. So I'm going to leave it on like that. Next, I'm going to bring in the room. And the room, I just tuck it in because the room is really what glues the whole drum set together. But I don't put it, I don't raise it up a lot. I just tuck it underneath it just to glue everything together. Here we go. Okay, if you notice there, I was at 18. I was happy with it, but I felt it was just a little too loud, so I brought it down 1 dB. And I tend to do that. 1 dB difference is when you have something that's 1 dB difference, that means that if you're listening for it, you'll know the difference. But if you're not listening to it, you might not know the difference. But 3 dB, when you lower something or you raise something by 3 dB, then everyone hears the difference, whether they're trying to listen to it or not. So that's the difference. So I use that as a guide when I'm mixing. If I feel that something really needs to be louder, like it's obvious that it needs to be louder or quieter, then I go for 3 dB. But if I feel like something is almost there, but not really, but it could use a little bit more balancing, then I'll do 1 dB. Okay, you notice how the toms, I left them alone. I do that last because I haven't cleaned the toms, and I have another video in which I show you how I clean toms. But for right now, I just leave them here and I take care of everything else. So right now, let's take care of this hat. And let's look at if there's a... Okay, let's go over here because here's where the hat is closed. It's probably like the verse. So let's listen to this part. Okay, and what am I listening to the hat? If you notice, I have it pan hard left, and that's because this is drummer's perspective. And what I'm listening to, I don't put the hat too loud. I really wanted to go from the center of the stereo spectrum to the left. So I want you to listen. If I mute the hat, you're still going to hear the hat coming from the overheads, but it's more centered. And then when I unmute it, you're going to notice that the volume kind of stays the same. It doesn't get like ridiculously loud, but it does shift to the left of the stereo field. Listen. See how it went from pretty much the center to the left and it got it just a little bit louder? That's what I'm looking for. And I think I got the hat at a good spot. Okay, so far everything is sounding great. And now finally my toms. And you're going to notice first the panning of my toms. Since I have 3 toms here, this is probably my left rack, my right rack, and my floor tom. And this is pretty much what I use to pan it. A 30 left, 20 right, and 70. I pretty much use this all the time and I don't change it. If I know that it's drummer's perspective, then I will do it this way. So now let's find a tom spot and let's get some levels here. Okay, here I see a roll. Here, there's 4 hits. But you're hearing it in the overhead because this is still muted, or it's not, the volume is not up. But if I bring up the volume, okay, and the way I did that was I held Alt and I click. Now you're going to hear it, but it's probably going to be loud. Yeah, way loud. So I'm just going to bring this down, and I may bring it down 3 dB. It's still loud. Let's bring it down to 6. Okay, I'm listening to the kick also, because the toms shouldn't be as loud as the kick, because the toms is really like kind of like their kicks, but in of themselves. So I'm going to bring this down a little bit more. Okay, so that's pretty good. So now I will balance the rest of the toms around that first tom. So let's look for, here is rack 1 and 2. And let's bring up tom 2 volume. Okay, so that's really loud. Okay, so it looks like around there. Okay, and let's do tom 3. Let's see where tom 3 is, right here. And again, let's bring this up. Not bad. There's more floor toms hits here. Let's hear this. There's a lot of resonance there. I'm going to have to fix that later. But overall, the drums are mixed. And I only spend, I don't spend a lot of time on this. I'm just getting a rough mix so I can get ready to edit these drums. And that's about it. Let's listen to a little bit over here. Let's listen to it at the beginning of the song. And let's listen to probably the verse where the hat is closed. Great. And that's how I prep my drums before I start editing them. So if you enjoyed this video, thank you for watching, and until next time.